Well, as we count down the days to the Voice referendum, 11 to go now, the Yes campaign is ramping up its final efforts to get the proposal over the line. Yes 23 has today unveiled its final ad of the campaign, which posits the Voice to Parliament as the only solution to Indigenous issues.
What if I told you that our infant mortality rate is twice as high as non-Indigenous babies? That they'll grow up half as likely to find employment and will face a life expectancy that's 8 years less than the rest of the country. A no vote means no progress.
A no vote means no progress. It's a nice slogan, but it seems somewhat insulting because the suggestion, of course, is that if you don't support the Voice, you don't want to fix the kind of issues described in the ad. I don't know anyone voting yes or no who doesn't care about mortality rates. And prominent Yes campaigner Noel Pearson was running a similar line this morning, talking to Neil Mitchell on 3AW. He said there was no plan B, that in terms of helping Indigenous Australians, it's the Voice and the Voice alone.
My point is, it looks like being defeated. As several people have said, doing nothing is not an option for the reasons you've just described. What is plan B? We need plan B.
There is no plan B. Mate, I've been at this for 30 years, working on these problems from the ground up, and I'm telling you that there is no plan B. No will be a disaster for all of us. We will all lose, including the no campaigners. We will lose. If we vote yes, we'll all win, including the no campaigners. This will be good for them and for the entire country if we vote yes.
The tactic now seems to be to hold a gun to people's heads, Here you have the Voice. If you support Indigenous people, you must vote for the Voice. It's the only way to fix things. And if you vote no, well, it'll be a disaster. Nothing will ever improve. The fact that many Indigenous people themselves do not support the Voice ought to disprove that. And as we've seen throughout much of the campaign, bludgeoning people into supporting you does not work. But he repeated that there would be no progress without the Voice and said a no result would lead Australia into the abyss.
What if it's a no vote?
In the event of a no, that's a precipice. I'm telling you, this side of the vote, that's an absolute abyss for Australia. There will be heartbreak. There will be absolute despair from people who know that without this reform, 15 years in the making, you cannot see progress ahead.
So Pearson was asked, what about the Voice will actually turn things around? How will it finally close the gaps we've failed to move for decades?
Why would that be different with a Voice? Why do you say they would suddenly start listening if you've got no power, no authority, but you're getting the message through? Why do you say they suddenly start listening?
It's more than we have now, Neil.
Pearson, one of the designers of the Uluru Statement from the Heart, one of the designers of the Voice to Parliament, cannot tell us how a Voice to Parliament would compel any government to address Indigenous issues except to say that it's more than we have now. So what's the point? And again, he had to admit that a Voice would have no power.
You're telling me through history we haven't listened. The politicians
I can tell you about good things that have been achieved when ministers have listened, when senior bureaucrats have listened to communities. There are many good things that have taken place and are taking place now, but they only happen when the government listens to the communities that are affected by these problems.
I hope, regardless of a yes or no vote, the government listens and the government acts, and I think we all do that.
They haven't in the past, Neil.
I know, but the yes... I'm not disagreeing with that, but the yes vote doesn't guarantee they'll act. It guarantees that they have to listen.
And that's a vast improvement from the current situation.
But how is it really a vast improvement? By his own admission, it's all reliant on the government of the day listening to what they are told. I mean, you can't tell me that every government over the past 50 years has not being told by Indigenous people what is going on in the communities. You can't tell me that they haven't been told about the poverty and abuse and domestic violence, and yet nothing has changed. You can provide all the advice you like, but it relies on someone acting on it. It's the job of the Indigenous Affairs Minister, who of course is Linda Burney at the moment, to be in constant contact with Indigenous people, to understand the issues, to be across the brief. Are we to truly believe that Burney cannot possibly fix any of these issues now, but magically she'll be able to do so once there's a voice to Parliament? I mean, she's Indigenous herself. But then Pearson took a different tack, and this is where the Yes campaign comes apart. Despite admitting earlier in the interview that the voice wouldn't have any real power, he decided to propose that it would actually put the responsibility to fix Indigenous issues on the shoulders of Indigenous people.
If the yes vote gets up, what's your next aim? Where do we go then? Obviously the life expectancy, all these other things.
Then the work starts. Then we have to take responsibility. Then you can blame us. You can blame us for the results, because if you give us a voice, then you can blame us. But you can't blame us if you don't give us the responsibility to contribute to the solution.
You can blame us. So suddenly this thing has a whole load of power. Enough power to put fixing Indigenous issues squarely on the shoulders of Indigenous people, he continued.
I heard Neil, an old Labor stalwart at a meeting in Brisbane, say to me, "Mate, can I go and tell my friends that, you know, when the blackfellas get the voice, they'll have to take responsibility then?" I said, yeah, that's a good message. And he said, and they'll have to stop whinging. And I said, well, you know, don't tell them I approve that message. But that's going to be essentially
stop
it.
whinging.
Yeah, the message is going to be, you give us responsibility to take charge of our problems, to take responsibility for the outcomes. Then we're going to have to wear whether we're making progress on.
But how is an advisory body giving you responsibility for the problems? It's only giving you a voice to get them through.
Well, it's the quality of the advice, it's the quality of the ideas, the innovation behind the problem solving. That'll all fall to us. It'll fall to us to come up with better solutions, because the solutions that are currently being implemented, clearly they're not working.
Aboriginal people will have to stop whinging. I mean, isn't that the whole point of a voice to Parliament? That you can whinge directly to the people who make the decisions in the hope they'll take some notice. And what you heard there from Pearson is the biggest problem for the Yes campaign. They're trying to simultaneously downplay the power of the voice because they don't want to spook the horses, and suggest that it's the solution to all our problems. It can't be both. It's either impotent or it has power. On one hand, it's nothing more than a simple advisory body, a modest request, an opportunity for Aboriginal people to have a chat with politicians and public servants. And on the other hand, it transfers all the responsibility of fixing Indigenous issues to Indigenous people. They won't be able to whinge anymore. It gives them the power to fix all their issues. They'll be in charge of their own destiny, and it won't be anyone else's problem anymore. Except that that is clearly not true. For one, we have no draft legislation to show exactly what this voice to Parliament is or how it would operate, something Noel Pearson himself previously said was needed to demonstrate to Australians what a voice would entail. No one can actually know what a voice to Parliament would look like because beyond some rough framework, there's no cohesive proposal. If it truly does put all the responsibility on Indigenous people, then it will have a lot more power than we've been led to believe. I mean, what would the job of the Indigenous Affairs Minister be? To simply enact whatever the voice tells him or her to do? Traditionally, the responsibility to enact policy ultimately falls on the minister. One of the key architects of the voice cannot tell us in a cogent manner what the voice would actually be. He doesn't know because no one knows. The message is all over the shop. And Noel Pearson, of course, was the man who wrote that, quote, Indigenous leaders Warren Mundine and now opposition Indigenous Australian spokeswoman Jacinta Price are just a front for the Centre for Independent Studies and the IPA think tanks and, quote unquote, just glove puppets for those think tanks. He wrote that the readers of The Australian were mostly obscurant and borderline casual racists. Then he did a 180 a month ago and said the secret weapon, quote unquote, to winning over what he called soft no voters was to be respectful to them. Well, it didn't last long because he was back on his personal attacks this morning.
Really? That's my last message, mate. It's my message to you too. Really? You're going to be churlish about this right to the bitter end? The process, we've been having this discussion for 15 years, Neil. I don't know if you've just tuned in now.